What happens when a #1 best-selling royal biographer and one of the most outspoken aristocratic commentators in Britain both refuse to let the same questions die? What happens when years of speculation suddenly collide with the best-selling book, public statements, unexplained contradictions, and a silence that critics claim has become louder than any answer? That is exactly where this story begins, because what started as whispers buried in comment sections has now exploded into a mainstream royal controversy that refuses to disappear.
Was also furious about the whole surrogacy business and all of the speculation.
Whole description she does of the Portland hospital, the birth, that was completely fabricated.
Being so variable, and not to mention swinging from side to side. Oh, let's do the chat.
And then goes into how she's very proud of Lilibet, her daughter, who's finding her voice. I mean, she is...
Archie competing with Tom Daley before he was even
the best thing to do.
Yeah, is that it?
If he wants to keep his wife and kids some sort of semblance of normalcy, he'll avoid
like a better relationship with his son and his grandchildren. I think Charles does feel a guilt for how Harry was treated.
In the trusted care of the doctors and staff at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in her children's birth, DNA, and even very existence.
For years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have insisted on controlling their own narrative. Every interview, every documentary, every carefully released photograph appeared designed to tell their side of the story. But suddenly, that control seemed to face a challenge from two people who were not hiding behind anonymous social media accounts or faceless gossip blogs. One was Tom Bower, a man whose reputation was built on digging through uncomfortable truths and speaking to people who usually never speak. The other was Lady Colin Campbell, a royal insider who has spent years publicly questioning details surrounding the Sussexes. Separately, there were controversial voices. Together, they became impossible to ignore. And then came March 2026. Tom Bower released Betrayal, and the reaction was immediate, not gradual, not slow. Immediate, the book shot straight to the top of bestseller lists, and suddenly every allegation, every claim, every uncomfortable question was back in circulation. Supporters of Harry and Meghan rushed to dismiss it. Critics rushed to amplify it. But something unusual happened. Instead of fading after a few news cycles, the debate grew larger. Why? Because the book wasn't focused on one accusation. It painted a broader picture. A picture of conflicts, strained relationships, disputed stories, and questions that had never truly gone away. One of the earliest stories to catch fire involved an alleged confrontation inside Kensington Palace. According to the account, what was supposed to calm tensions instead turned into a heated exchange. Royal watchers immediately seized on every detail. What was said, who reacted, who stayed silent, and perhaps most importantly, why did so many versions of palace history seem to point toward growing divisions behind closed doors?
First of all, Tom, why Meghan?
Well, because she posed a challenge.
The argument itself generated headlines, but many observers believe something else buried inside the book was even more explosive. Questions about money, questions about influence, questions about image management, questions about who was really controlling the narrative. And as readers turned page after page, a recurring theme began to emerge. According to Bower's portrayal, nothing was accidental. Every move had purpose. Every public appearance carried strategy. Every relationship seemed to have a role within a larger plan. Bower reportedly raised additional questions regarding dates, timelines, and the sequence of events surrounding the birth. Suddenly, people weren't looking at one statement anymore. They were comparing dozens of statements, appearances, interviews, and public records. And then there was the comment, a single remark, a brief moment, a sentence that lasted only seconds. Yet years later, people were still talking about it. When Harry appeared publicly after Archie's birth, observers noticed his reference to babies changing over 2 weeks. 2 weeks, not 2 days. At first, many dismissed it as a harmless mistake, a tired new father, a slip of the tongue, an exhausted parent speaking under intense public scrutiny.
Meghan snapping at Prince William saying, "If you don't mind, get your finger out of my face." Boy, oh boy.
Reasonable explanations existed, but critics argued the remark became significant because it was being placed alongside other questions that had already emerged. One inconsistency can be ignored. Several inconsistencies become harder to dismiss. That distinction kept the discussion alive. The debate intensified because neither side seemed willing to back down. Supporters argued every family deserves privacy. Critics argued public contradictions naturally invite scrutiny. The result was a controversy that fed itself continuously. What made the situation even more unusual was the source of the allegations. This wasn't an anonymous blogger. This wasn't a random internet rumor. This involved a best-selling author attaching his name and professional reputation to claims inside a nearly 500-page publication. It involved Lady Colin Campbell repeating her arguments publicly for years without retreating from them. And because both figures continued speaking, the story never disappeared. Instead, attention shifted toward another birth, another child, another set of questions. This time involving Lilibet. What happened next would push the controversy into an entirely different territory, where documents, timelines, hospital details, delayed announcements, and unexplained coincidences became the center of a debate that was about to become even more intense than anything surrounding Archie. What transformed this story from a royal argument into a full-scale controversy was what happened when attention turned toward Lilibet.
Very toxic. I think they do their best, the Windsors, Prince Charles, the Queen, to keep it cool, but it's just impossible.
Suddenly, critics weren't discussing palace tensions or media strategy anymore. They were dissecting timelines, announcements, documents, and details that many people had never noticed before. The official public version seemed simple enough. A baby girl was born in California, the family celebrated privately, and the world eventually received the announcement. End of story. Except for some observers, it wasn't the end at all. It was the beginning of another chain of questions. Why was there a delay before the announcement reached the public? Why were certain details debated so aggressively afterward? Why did every answer seem to create even more questions? For supporters of Harry and Meghan, the explanation was obvious. Parents wanted privacy. They deserved private moments. Not everything required public disclosure. But critics argued that the issue wasn't privacy itself. The issue was consistency. Every time a new detail emerged, it appeared to create another puzzle piece that didn't fit perfectly with the previous picture. Then came discussions about timelines, hospital details, and administrative records. Separately, each point could be explained away. Together, critics claim they formed a pattern. Lady Colin Campbell repeatedly returned to that argument. Not one detail, a pattern, not one contradiction. Several, not one unanswered question. Many, and the more the debate continued, the more attention shifted toward visual evidence. Suddenly, photographs became evidence in the court of public opinion.
Mother and baby are doing incredibly well. It's been the most amazing experience.
Videos were replayed frame by frame. Public appearances were analyzed with microscopic intensity. People compared one image against another, 1 month against another, one event against another. It became one of the most emotionally charged aspects of the entire controversy because it moved beyond documents and entered territory people could actually see for themselves. Supporters argued that every pregnancy is different and that drawing conclusions from appearances alone was irresponsible. Critics argued they were observing irregularities that deserved explanation. Neither side seemed willing to surrender ground. The result was a debate that became increasingly polarized and increasingly personal. As the controversy intensified, another issue emerged that Lady C repeatedly emphasized. She argued that what made this discussion unusual was not merely the claims themselves, but the fact that the conversation had continued publicly for years without reaching a definitive conclusion. Normally, royal controversies burn brightly and disappear. This one didn't. Every interview seemed to revive it. Every book reignited it. Every public appearance generated new speculation. And then there was the issue of the name Lilibet, which should have been a touching family tribute, quickly became another battlefield. Publicly, headlines celebrated the name as a heartfelt gesture connecting generations of royal history. Privately, according to some commentators, the reaction inside royal circles was far more complicated. Instead of universal warmth, they described discomfort, frustration, and even anger. Suddenly, the debate wasn't only about births, it was about symbolism, legacy, ownership, family relationships, and whether one of the most personal names in royal history should ever have become part of a public announcement. But underneath every argument sat a larger issue. This was the point both Bower and Lady C repeatedly returned to. They argued that because the royal family occupies a constitutional role, questions surrounding succession are fundamentally different from questions involving ordinary celebrities. Critics viewed the matter through a constitutional lens. Supporters viewed it through a privacy lens. Those competing perspectives perspectives became the foundation of everything that followed, and perhaps the most discussed silence of all involved legal action. Harry and Meghan have demonstrated repeatedly that they are willing to challenge media organizations when they believe false information has been published. Yet critics noted that neither Tom Bower nor Lady Colin Campbell faced legal action over these specific allegations. Supporters argued that public figures cannot respond to every accusation. Critics argued that such serious claims would normally trigger an aggressive response if they were completely false. That disagreement remains unresolved, and it continues fueling debate years later. That is why this story refuses to disappear. Most royal scandals fade because eventually an answer arrives, attention shifts, or public interest evaporates. None of those things have happened here. Instead, every unanswered question seems to generate 3 more. Every silence creates fresh speculation. Every attempt to dismiss the controversy appears to keep it alive. And that is where the mystery remains today. Not necessarily in what has been proven, but in what continues to be argued. Not in what people know, but in what people believe they still don't know. Because at the center of this entire controversy sits one stubborn question that neither side seems capable of putting to rest. If the answers are truly simple, why has the debate only grown louder with time? The palace remains silent. Harry and Meghan remain silent. Their critics continue speaking. Their supporters continue defending them. And somewhere between those competing narratives, this story continues unfolding, with no sign that the final chapter has been written yet.